Hello and welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to make a build video on Nyx, but before we get into the build, let's talk about her abilities. So with Nyx, you have 4 abilities. You have your 1, which is Mind Control. You'll take over an enemy unit and then you can shoot them to give them bonus damage, and they will do radiation damage to other enemies. Your 2, you throw out these little bolts and they will armor strip enemies and also do a little bit of damage. They also will steal armor from the enemies, steal shields from the enemies, and steal overguard from the enemies and give it to you. Your 3 is called Chaos. You do a giant AoE and it will turn all the enemies and make them fight each other. And then your 4th ability is Absorb. You put a little shield around you in a sphere and you will absorb damage and get a big ol' 400% damage buff if you absorb enough damage. So let me show you how these abilities all work. For our first ability, we'll target this guy here, and then you shoot him, and you can see on the right side of the screen, our damage is going up, which it'll go up more if you have an Incarnate active or Galvanized mods stacked up. I've gotten this up to 4,000% with just my burst on. And then our second ability, you can see here, it'll armor strip, and it'll be an AoE, and then when you kill the guys who have your bolts on them, they will spread to other enemies who don't have your bolts on them. But this is an AoE armor strip, basically. And then your third ability, all of these guys that are purple are affected by our third ability, and they will all now fight each other. And then because of radiation, they will also do that status to other enemies. And then our fourth ability is Absorb. You will hold a shield out, and it will absorb all damage being shot at you, and then you can turn it into a damage buff for yourself. And then with our Augment Assimilate, you can move around while using Absorb. So we have 2 builds today for you. We have one build, which is my main setup that I use in pretty much all the time I'm using Nyx. And then we have a budget setup for those of you who just want to try Nyx, who got it from Circuit, or maybe you bought Nyx with Platinum from the market or something and you just want to try her out. So for our main setup here, we have Corrosive Projection, which causes enemies to lose armor when you're not using your 2, so just passively. Equilibrium for more energy, Umbral Intensify for strength, Streamline for a little bit of efficiency, Primed Continuity for ability duration, Flow for energy, Augur Reach for ability range, and Stretch for ability range. And then your Arcanes, Iron Molt Augmented and Arcane Energized. These are flexible and you can kind of use whatever you want to here, but these are what I've enjoyed using. And then we have an Augment for Nyx, which makes it to where we can walk around while using Absorb, and instead of being a duration type of thing, it is a drain now, so it'll just drain energy, and with this setup, we lose 3 energy per second with it active, which isn't that bad. And then with Energized, you have a chance to gain 25, and then Equilibrium just gives you all of the health and stuff on your pickups. Now, for our budget setup, we have Corrosive Projection, same thing. Any aura will work here, you just want it for the increased energy, basically. We have Equilibrium for the energy still, Streamline for efficiency, Flow for energy, and then if you want to, you can swap on Augur Reach for a little bit more range, but you don't need this. And then Assimilate, which is our main player here, because it lets us walk around with our 4 active. Both setups are Steel Path viable. I used to use this on Steel Path before getting Nyx Prime. And you can see here up in the top left, we are only using half of our energy pretty much. So you don't need a potato on this setup. And if you really want to, you could drop Augur Reach, and this puts you at the 30 energy still. So this one will still work. But this is my main setup, and this is what I will be showing in Steel Path today. So with that all being shown, we will jump into the Steel Path, and I can show you how this works in an actual mission. Alrighty, now we are here in the Steel Path to show off this build. Also, with Equilibrium, if you don't want to use that, you could use Energy Nexus, but if you do swap that in, keep in mind that while you have your 3 active, or your 4 active, I should say, Energy Nexus will not activate because you're constantly draining energy. So it would only work if you have your 4 off. But with that all said, we are here in Steel Path now. Let's go ahead and take over this guy and make him work for us. And got up to 4,000% damage. And then we can just kind of spray around with Burst on. And then we can hit our 3 to make them fight each other instead of me. And while your 3's active, you don't really have to have Assimilate on, because since they're fighting each other instead of you. You can see here, aside from these guys who didn't get affected by it, we can just kind of recast it to get all the enemies. And then you can see here, they're fighting each other instead of me, so I don't really have to have Assimilate active. And that's why I mentioned Energy Nexus, because they're not fighting me. And then R2, we can armor strip them, just to make them a little quicker to kill. And then with your 4, while you block damage, you can build up a big old damage multiplier, which you can see up in the top right. We've blocked 700 damage with it. Or 71,000 damage, sorry, I was looking at the wrong icon. And then as you build this up, I can whip out the 3, get rid of these guys. And then when you pop your 4, you can see there we have a 400% weapon damage boost. So it just makes our gun even stronger. And then with our other abilities, we can keep the enemies from looking at us. And you're pretty much free to just do whatever you want, because they're fighting each other instead of me. And I want to say, if you get close enough to the enemy affected, they will target you. But if you stay, like, you know, a pretty decent distance, they're not going to target you. And they'll just fight each other. And the enemies will fight the affected enemy instead of you as well. So even if they're not directly affected by it, they're still partly affected by it, because the AI will target the affected enemy rather than fighting you. But your 4 is more of like an emergency policy almost. But if you want to keep it active at all times, you can, because we do have 603 energy with this build. So when I do like long survival missions, at a certain point I'll just keep it on permanently. Because with equilibrium and everything like that, like these here, and then we just throw on this, it sucks them all up. And that just gives us a ton more energy from all the orbs. You can see here, every one of these will just give us more energy to keep our 4 active even longer. But there's not really a need to keep it on here because I'm not really under any threat. Let's go grab some life support. Alrighty, now we have some more life support. And a thing to note with your 4 or Assimilate is while you have it active, you do move at 50% speed. So what you can do, as you can see here, we can't double jump, you can roll, and you cannot bullet jump. But you can just roll and jump once and roll. So if you stack a bunch of parkour velocity, whether it's through Kratos, Mobilize, any way to stack parkour velocity, Archon shards, it will all make it to where when you do your roll, you can still basically move at full speed. But I've pretty much just been running base Assimilate and just kind of dealing with the lower movement speed, because you're not really under any threat of anything while you have your 4 active. Then you can see here, we're just kind of tearing up with the burst on. And then if you do try my burst on build, and you don't have the galvanized mods, you could just throw on the defaults. The galvanized are just better in late game compared to the regulars, so it's something to look to when you're upgrading later on. Because once I got the galvanized mods fully upgraded, a lot of my weapons came online once I started throwing some Forma on them. And man, that's a huge power upgrade. Let's go ahead and make these guys fight each other so I can stop this mech over here from summoning the Necromech. But with that, our mission's done here. And Nyx is a pretty simple frame for the most part from what I've noticed. Your 1, you make him an enemy, and she does have 3 other augments, which I'll throw up on screen now. But I haven't really messed with any of the augments too much. I know some people use, I believe it's pacifying bolts, but I haven't really messed with any of her other augments yet. I've been curious to mess with her augment for her first ability, because it seems like it could be really, really good, or really cool at least, just to kind of mess around with every now and then. But that's everything that I have for my Nyx build today, and I showed you the weapons that I've been running on Nyx as well. So, with that being said, I think that's about it for this video. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video.